Welcome to another edition of the GM Files. Jim Duquette alongside Bobby Evans, and we are pleased and honored to be joined by one of our favorites, Dan ODowd, former Major League General Manager, 15 years with the Colorado Rockies, longtime executive, now MLB Network analyst. Dan, thanks for the time. Let's get right to it. We've got a lot to ask you. I wanted to ask you right out of the gate, for people that want to be, and I know you've been asked this on the front offices before, like getting into the front office, your pathway. Did you know you wanted to get into the front office baseball operations side when you first started?
I did. Yeah, guys, probably similar to you. My pathways were unique. It's not the same way in today's game as it was. I went to work in a commissioner's office. In fact, Wendy Seelig and I were an executive development trainee together in the early 80s. And my first job was with the Orioles, and I was actually selling tickets on East 33rd Street. And then I ran a program called the Designated Hitters. Lou Michelson was one of my mentors. Hank Peters was the GM at the time. I worked pretty much in every side of the business operations department, but I had let Hank Peters know that my strong desire was to be on the baseball side. So I finally started making some money as a director of marketing for the Orioles, and he offered me a job in the baseball operations department as an administrative assistant. I was a secretary in the scouting and development department. Took a gigantic pay cut, moved over there. I had a little scouting territory in Southern Maryland and Southern Maryland, Northern Virginia. And so I scouted and I filed reports and I did typing and I did all administrative work. And then, Hank went to Cleveland. He bought me with him, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
That's awesome. When I remember you my first memory of you is as the farm director with the Indians. And it was very evident then that you guys were leading the charge in a lot of different ways, in a unique fashion. What was your favorite job, other than, maybe your favorite job was being a GM, but what was your favorite job? Was being a farm director amongst those favorites?
I would say running scouting and the scouting department and the player development department with the Indians was I had most joy doing that job than any job in the game. I felt like, Bobby, that was really touching the play. I felt like I was really making a difference in people's lives. I was emotionally connected. I didn't fret over the big league wins and losses as you do as a GM. And so that was looking back at my career now in the rearview mirror, I could say that was probably my most enjoyable years in the game. I love the people I was working with, I had an incredible player development staff with Charlie Manuel and Brian Graham and Gordy McKenzie and Harry Spielman. Just incredible. Johnny Gorel, baseball man, Minnie Mendoza. And I didn't realize that at the time necessarily, but looking back at it, it was just an incredible blessing. And that to this day, that is my most favorite thing to talk about in the game is scouting and development.
Those are some unbelievable baseball people. I want to ask you about mentors in a second, but I wanted to, with the Indians, they were always out front when it comes or at least signing contracts, right? And other things too. But when you were doing that, I know part of it was by necessity, but was there any doubt or fear along the way? Because sometimes doing that thing first in the industry can be, there can be some anxiety with that.
No, and it was the situation we were in. It was really cool. Hank Peters was my mentor in the game, and he was like Mr. Consistent. So he never wavered on anything. And he had, as you guys know, it all comes down to ownership. He had this incredible relationship with our owners, Dick and David Jacobs. Dick and David Jacobs were mall developers. And so they understood risk and reward. They also understood at that time in Cleveland, we were just a AAA team for almost every player as they filtered out throughout the game, that we had to do something completely out of the box and differently. So we created, which is known now as our white paper. And part of it was a strategy of the accumulation of talent, but signing that talent at a very, very young age before the players were ever proven, knowing some of it we were going to hit on and some of it maybe we wouldn't hit on, but we were going to do it in its totality. So every player felt like they were a part of something bigger than themselves. And our owners bought into that completely. And they bought into that because Hank Peters had educated them so well into the game of baseball that this was probably our only chance to survive in Cleveland long term.
It was exciting to watch I think it was the World Series team that, in many ways, I guess, you made a big trade, I know, with the Giants.
We did
in 97 with Matt Williams, and he came over, and a lot of different pieces, a lot of those guys that you had extended your own system, Kenny Lofton, and tell us about that experience. That, I guess, that was that your first World Series experience?
95. Yeah. 95 was our first World Series, and we kind of remade
95. ourselves
ourselves after the Giant trade. And boy, that was one I think we wished we redid. I think we knew Jeff Kent was going to be good. I can't tell you we knew he was going to be that good. And then we went back in 97. And that was really cool for us, Bobby, because it's one thing, and you know this going through the Giants, it's one thing to get to the World Series with a group. It's another thing to kind of remake your team as that group kind of breaks up a little bit and still have the wherewithal to get back to a World Series. So we are really proud of getting back in 1997. Hey, like you did with Sabes, John Hart and I were like wives. I mean, we talked more on the phone than probably my wife and I talked on the phone. And we were symbiotic in our thought process and everything we did. And that was by far my most enjoyable experience of my career because I love the city of Cleveland. Both two older children were born there. My youngest was born in Denver. It's just, I mean, everything fell together for us in Cleveland. And you guys know that very rarely happens in a career, and it never happens twice. And the Colorado job for me was, when I left the Indians in 1999, most people don't know this, but I had 3 opportunities. One was with the Brewers, one was with Seattle, and one was with Colorado. And honestly, of the 3, I took the worst opportunity, and I didn't know that at the time because when I was the farm director of the Indians, I had a team in Colorado Springs. So I felt like I understood altitude better than anybody else did. Boy, was I wrong. And number 2, I took market because I thought the Denver market was going to explode. But the experience in Colorado for 15 years, I can tell you guys, was a really humbling experience for me because everything that I had been taught with the Orioles as a foundation piece and with the Indians, a lot of that simply did not work in Colorado at all, just based upon the unique environment of playing, a mile above sea level.
I'm curious on that, Dan, because like you said, building teams in Cleveland way different than Colorado. I remember talking to you when you were in Colorado about those challenges. Do you think that if you went back there again, that you would do it differently and you have the answers, or is it still one of those things that's elusive?
Jimmy, I'd like to say I would do some things differently. I think that I would use the Rays model more than any other model in the game. I don't know how that would go over in that marketplace because there's affinity for star players there like they are in San Francisco. So churning those players as much as the Rays churn those players. But, I can't tell you that I would say I have it figured out. I'm not sure anybody will. I'm proud of the fact we got to the World Series, but I wish we had one more there. And I try to sum it up this way. And Bobby, I'm going to really use you guys as an example because you guys just kick my butt in Denver all the time, is that there's skill and there's luck involved in the game. Skilled teams end up being the best teams. But because of the unique environment of Colorado, where you're never playing in the same climactic conditions consistently through the course of the year, skill doesn't play as large a factor as luck does. So I use San Francisco as an example. Before they moved the fences, I thought the Giants had the biggest competitive advantage in the game for this simple reason. The teams that they constructed in San Francisco were based upon great starting pitching, lights out bullpen, and the ability to situationally hit and grind out games in San Francisco to win games at home. Well, that's the exact same style that you have to play to win games on the road. And we never could play those type of games in Colorado if we didn't outslug people. In fact, I know I'm talking to Sabes, he always thought I was cheating because of the humidor, because he would come into Colorado. And I mean, it was like, oh my God, Dan, how do you tolerate this place? And so, Jimmy, I don't know if there's a firm, I think you can win there. I think your windows are very short because of the attrition factor of injuries playing a mile above sea level for so many different ways. And the pitching is one thing. It was the hitting part that I never really wrapped my arms around. In fact, my leading to owning a VR company was based upon a lot of my experience in Denver, looking for ways where we could see ball movement at home so we could see ball movement on the road. because you don't see ball movement at home at all. And then when you play, half your games on the road, and half of those games, other than Arizona, which is the closest in sea level to us in the game, you go to San Francisco, San Diego, and LA, you're playing at sea level or below. The millimeters of movement patterns are way different than Denver. So if you're a hitter that swings 30 times at home in a given series, and you've now calibrated your swing based upon pitch recognition and swing, and now you go on the road and the ball moves a millimeter differently, what is a proven physical thing quickly becomes a mental thing. And I wouldn't know how to overcome that. I simply do not have to overcome that. So anyway.
How about that winning streak though? I mean, in 07, what that's incredible. I mean, I don't know how much of that was on the road versus home, but I mean, it was 18 games. I mean, it was crazy how hot you guys got at the right time.
Bobby, we felt, Clint and I and our late president, Kelly McGregor, we felt we had a really good team that year because we finally come to grips with the fact, after the Hampton and Nagel and all the crap that I did that didn't work, that to win, we were going to have to build through the draft. And we had some great drafts. And that core, like of the 25 guys on that roster, 19 were homegrown. So we thought we were a good team that had underachieved all year long. And we just got hot at the right time. And you guys know, you've been on clubs that all of a sudden you get hot, and the confidence that we always lack confidence. And our confidence level just went to the roof with talented players. I mean, Matt Holliday should have been the MVP that year. Helton found the root. Brad Hopp had a monster year. Garrett Atkins had a monster year. Tulo came up and was a star. We made a real good trade to get Kaz Matsui. And our whole team just clicked. And I think the Red Sox were a better team than us on paper. But boy, I would have loved to play them without having 10 days off. I mean, I would have loved if we could have played them just on that role of that role we were on.
That was
such a shame. God, that was such a shame because I was really
pissed at the Indians. Let me tell you, I was so pissed off at the Indians, and I let Mark know that they were up 3-1 in that series. First of all, it would have been a blast for me to play them. Number two, they're up 3-1 and they blew the series, and that really killed our mojo completely. Our guys just caught their breath, and you guys know it's a game of balance, rhythm, and timing, and when you lose that, it's hard to find again.
We will be back with Dan O'Dowd, former GM of the Rockies. Right now, you're with the future GM of the Rockies, Jake Storielli. I'm here to tell you about DraftKings. The hits literally keep on coming. Normally, we're baseball, but how about some boxing? Big event this weekend, and you got to join DraftKings, their sports book, right now because they're giving away free money. $1 to win $55 if you pick the correct fighter to win this weekend. 1 into 55. $1. You pick the right fighter, so just do that. DraftKings Sportsbook, they've still got basketball. Hockey playoffs are coming. Oh, my God. More free money to be had. Safe, secure, and reliable. Withdraw your funds at your convenience. Go to DraftKings, the top-rated sportsbook app now, and use promo code GMFiles when you sign up. Limited time only. You can bet $1, turn into $55 on this weekend's main event. That's right, DraftKings Sportsbook. $1 into $55 when placing a bet this weekend's big fight. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook. You must be 21 or older. New Jersey, Indiana, or PA only. New customers only. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or in Indiana, 1-800-9-WITH-IT.
So you mentioned.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to shift a little bit because you mentioned Kelly McGregor, who I just have heard nothing but wonderful things about over the years, and then of course we experienced that sudden loss of him. What can you say about Kelly McGregor, your fondest memory of him, and as a leader and as a person running an organization as he was?
Bobby, the greatest thing I can say is that I didn't go there as a Christian and I came out as one. And it was all because of Kelly McGregor. I mean, he taught me what it meant to be a man for others. He made me look at my own selfishness and understood and made me question why I did what I did and how I did it the way I did it. I went there as an emotionally mature individual, no matter what my age was. And I left there as a totally different person. So I don't think of all the struggles that, took place in Colorado, I'd ever trade that in because ultimately I'm a different human being because I was around him. What's funny too, guys? See, I believe they're shelf life jobs. Like, I think these jobs should come like on a milk carton, expiration dates. And 2010, really no one's known this because I never shared it. I was going to resign at the end of the year because I felt like I'd been there for 10 years. And I just kind of knew, like, I had shot a lot of bullets and I didn't know how many I had left emotionally. And I knew my political capital was at its all-time high and I knew it wasn't going to ever be higher. But then when Kelly passed away, I just felt a responsibility to stay there. In hindsight, I don't think that was a good decision because, I was in a fog for almost 2 years after Kelly's death. It hit me that hard. And, to this day, I'm still not even sure I'm the same person because of his death, because we were that close. And I truly believe in my heart, Kelly would have been at some point in time the commissioner of our game. I think he was that well respected in our industry, and he was that kind of leader. He did nothing for himself. He always did things that were for the best interest of others. And the organization's never recovered from that because it's hard to find those kind of people.
Sure.
That's really good insight. Personal growth versus professional growth. Did you grow more? So personally, is it fair to say you grew the most as a person in Colorado? But how about professionally? Like where
I did too, professionally too, Jimmy. Yeah, because you know why? Because I had to keep asking the question, why? Most baseball people, when I grew up in the game, didn't do that. Like, why do we do it this way? Like, is there a better way to do it? Well, this is just the way we do it. But in Colorado, you got to question those things all the time because you're constantly trying to build a better mousetrap. So I had so many nights when I drive home at the ballpark going, oh man, I'm not sure I know how to do this, or I'm not sure I can figure this out. So I really grew professionally because I questioned every part of my beliefs about what I liked in a player, I didn't like in a player, what I liked about in staff people, or what maybe I didn't like. I questioned all of that constantly. So I kept growing and kept asking questions. So I grew both as a person and a professional there, more so than anything. And it's funny, and you guys can relate to this completely. When I finally left, I felt like I was at a point in time in my career where I was totally comfortable with everything that I knew, and no one cares anymore. And that's the humbling part of the game, is that, okay, now I really have an idea of how to do this job and do it well, but then the window closes because the game has gotten so much younger. So it's kind of comical that way. It's humbling that way, but that's the game of baseball.
Well, you mentioned 10 years, and I know I've heard Theo mention, many times how 10 years is kind of his window, and I think he took that even with the Cubs, and I've heard that with other leaders that 10-year mark is really a good turnover point. It's interesting you say that, and it's also comes with a lot of accomplishment now in a transition to a new role at MLB Network, and and I think that your voice in the game has even grown greater, because of the presence on the network and the way you present the game and the way you address the issues of the game and the way you're able to speak into those. What's your experience been as an analyst in that transition?
Well, a great question. And man, first of all, I love the people I work with at the also love that I'm the only GM, and the reason is that is that we look at the game from a different prism than the players look at the game from, and we simply do based upon our life experiences. And so I've learned a lot at the network from my analysts, things that I never even thought of as an executive, but I've been able to speak, I think, pretty clearly about what it's like to be a GM too. And I've tried it. When I took the job, Bobby, I took the job not trying to get another GM job. And I think there's two different ways to approach that kind of job. If you take that job trying to get another GM job, you're going to be politically correct in everything you say. Or you take the job and you talk about it based upon your passion of how you view whatever that may be. That might not go over so well sometimes with club executives or even owners. But I thought when I took that job, I was going to be true to myself and what I believe. That doesn't mean I'm right. That just means that, that's my opinion anyway. And I was going to speak the opinion very strongly.
Like when we're on this side of it, you evolve as the game evolves, right? There's certain things you like about it, certain things that you'd like to change. What do you like about today's game, Dan?
I still love the game. I still love young players. I still love the enthusiasm that they bring to the game. I still love watching players compete at the highest level. But I think our game needs I hate the 3 true outcomes in our game. I really do. I hate that we've lost a generation of how to play offense. For me, everything goes back to how players are compensated. Players are always going to follow how they're compensated. And so I'm not against any of the rule changes, as long as they're vetted out to the point of, we really know what we're doing long term, because I don't think you can turn back from them once you go in that direction. And I don't like the way amateur baseball is being run in our country. And, I do think that's symbolic of what happens at the big league level. I think it's all tied into one. And I think we need to put a greater emphasis on developing all around players rather than guys that just throw hard or guys that hit the ball in the ballpark. And so I think college scholarships need to change accordingly too. I think there's a lot we can do in the game, but I still think we have a great game.
I had the privilege of visiting with Coach Tim Corbin after the Vanderbilt Mississippi State game on Sunday, and he told me about an infielder on his team, has the same last name as you. I think
Yep.
your youngest son,
Yep.
I think, right? Jack?
Yes, correct.
Jack ODowd.
Jack.
And what is it like to see him experience such an elite level of program at Vanderbilt and just his passion for the game? I mean, the fact that he's playing at a collegiate level. I tell every kid I coach in Little League, hey, if you only show up at practice once a week and play one game a week, if you keep doing that long enough, you'll end up in the front office. So obviously Jack must have had a different level of commitment to the game to be able to play at this level. How exciting is that for you?
It's great. It's so much easier for me with 10 years apart from the older one than the younger one. The older one, I probably made some mistakes with, as all you do with your first kid. Even GMs in games get probably a little too more involved than they should with their kid's passion. This one I've taken a totally different approach with. One, Jack is a exceptionally good player. He wanted to go to Vandy from a young age. His older sister went to Vandy, so when we went to visit her, he would go and also participate in their little kid camps. And then he went to their big boy camps. And Tim offered him between his 8th grade and freshman season. And so Jack was committed to go to Vandy a long time. And Jack went in there with eyes wide open, knowing that, hey, it's one thing committing to Vandy, it's nothing getting on the field with Vandy. And Jack, as a freshman, I call it that second tier down. You have, the kids that for me would have went in the draft last year if there was a normal draft. And then he's in that next tier down guys, and he's playing behind. Like I think Carter Young, Jack's a shortstop. I think Carter Young is, for me, one of the top 3 shortstops in the country. I mean, the guy is like really good. But what that's done for Jack is when you show up and play for Tim's program, if you don't bring it every single day, the train is going to roll right over you. And Jack has to bring his A game to practice every single day because he's competing against kids that are really good. And I know nothing about what's going on with Jack's college career other than watching him grow physically, fundamentally, and mentally. Tim's practices that I've been privy at time to get to, only because, I'm other parents too, they can watch. Tim trains at a game speed level with his practices, unlike anybody I've ever seen. And I've learned a lot just watching how he structures and runs his practices. Jack went in there as a plus bat and a developing defender. His defensive skills have just gone through the roof. And it's only because of how Tim teaches and the demands and standards that the program has, that you just can't take a day off. So even though he hasn't got a lot of playing time this year, the improvements I've seen in him as a man off the field and as a player on the field have been dramatic.
While we're talking about the amateur level, let's put your scouting director hat on. Who's the sleeper kid that you drafted, either as a GM, scouting director, whatever? Because you had Tulo, Helton, Arenado, Holiday. Like, you had some unbelievable drafts. When you look at it, is there a guy as part of that stands out there? You're like, man, this guy was under the radar. We surprised a bunch of people and we got him.
I think I just lost you guys here quickly. I would say Clint Barmas was our underrated guy that went on to have a 12-year career, was a shortstop from a Midwest college. I thought Brad Hopp, I thought Corey Dickerson. I mean, I think these are really good major league players that no one realized how deep they were taken in the draft. I would say the one player in Cleveland that we took deep that I felt like I was a part of was Jim Thome, obviously, because Jimmy was an 8th-round draft pick from a junior college in Chicago. And my gosh, he turned out to be jaw-dropping. So Billy Schmidt and his group did a wonderful job like I believe Dick Tidrow did and Johnny Barr and everybody else in San Francisco. It took us a few years to find our footing in Colorado after the Matt Harrington first year debacle. But I think those failures really sharpened, what I did with scouting in a complicated industry. I made it really simple, and I'll share that with you guys. So I'd sit with our scouts and I made it so clear, give me guys that can find the barrel of the bat to the ball. I don't care. I don't care what they look like. Don't worry about their defensive shortcomings. Just find me guys that can hit. Go to ball games, and when you see a guy that can hit, write a report in them, and then do all your background work to find out what is off field and how mentally tough he is. With pitchers, find me guys that have balance, rhythm, and timing consistently over the rubber. That's it. I didn't care about anything else. And we had some profiles that we kind of got locked up in. In fact, I changed our scouting reports to go from number grades to impact, contributor, and value players. Because I would sit in scouting meetings and we would ramble on and on about whether a guy's a 5 or a 6 or 6 or a 7. I said, this is ridiculous. We're not going to do it this way. So if he's a contributor, that means he's going to be an average major league player. If he's an impact player, he has a chance to be that plus an all-star sometimes. And if he's a value player, he's a kid we're going to fit in our system. He may matriculate to the big leagues, but he's going to make our system better in one way, shape, or form. Group them in one of those 3 categories. Find me those kind of players and keep it as simple as possible. That worked.
Well, you did a great job, and you look at some of those names on the impact list, that are still impacting the game. Obviously, Arenado more recently, of course, Blackman and Tulowitzki. I mean, from the Bay Area, stealing a guy from the Bay Area like that. But a lot of guys fun to watch, and a lot of reasons why your teams were fun to watch over the years. And hopefully you have a lot of pride in that. I think about all that you've learned along the way. What do you wish you had learned when you started? What do you wish you knew when you started that you know now?
That GMs really, at the end of the day, we don't control the wins and losses on the field. And that your emotional maturity to handle the ups and downs of the game is the most important leadership quality that you have as a GM. Because like Terry Ryan said it so well when he left the job. He said, I forgot about the wins and I couldn't forget about the losses. I think going back and looking at it again, it took me too long to make that jump of emotional maturity to recognize that I in some way could affect the wins on the field on a given night based upon my decision-making process that we had in the front office. That was foolish. It was grandiose thinking. It's not reality. A game is played by players. They're going to have good seasons, bad seasons. The staff is going to make good decisions. They're going to make bad decisions. Everybody that's in around the game will never learn the game to the point that they think they know the game. And I wish all the signs were there, Bobby, for me to learn that sooner than I did. I was just really slow picking up on that. I got it eventually. It just took me too long to get it.
We have a lot of Yankee fans that see this, Dan. What your thoughts on the current team? Obviously, the offense has been a struggle to some degree, the starting pitching too. But what do you think of the state of the team?
Jimmy, I tell you, the one concern, first of all, I think they're going to hit more than they're hitting. But I do think the Yankees really have to look at their scouting and development. I think Damon Oppenheimer is one of the best scouting directors in the game. So I'd focus more on development than scouting. I mean, when you look at their track record of development of impact players to the big league level or even contributors, it's really thin. And I think what happens when a GM is in a job for a long period of time, like Cash has been, I just think you kind of lose touch with that part of your organization because the other part becomes so time consuming. And yet you look at Aaron Judge, certainly an impact player as a corner outfielder. When's the last starting pitcher that they've developed into an impact starting pitcher? Since Andy Pettitte. Severino, probably through their Latin America program. But I don't care how large a market you are, you constantly have to be churning out young players to your big league club. One, it keeps it fresh. Number two, it balances your payroll. And number three, it connects your organization together in ways that it's so unique. And I think the Yankees are going to be good this year. I concerns about their starting pitching. their depth or lack thereof, and they're counting on guys that are coming off a lot of injuries. I think their bullpen's going to be good, and I think they're going to hit. But I would be bigger picture concerned. I would really start to examine, how we become a more proficient development team, and stop relying on free agents and trades, because I just don't. And Bobby, you know this really well, because you guys unearth like incredible players off the scrap heap. And the Yankees have done that too, but that runs out eventually too. You have to develop your own players.
No doubt, no doubt. One of the developments of this season has just been how dominant. Speaking of New York, how dominant DeGrom has been, and and Sandy's taken on a big role. Returning to a team which is very unique. I mean, it doesn't happen all that often that you return back to your own club. And tell us a little bit about your observations of his early tenure there with the Mets and the challenges he had.
Well, I think he had a huge setback with what happened with Jared. I'm sure that really took him completely by surprise. It took all of us that were in the industry by surprise. Because I think when he hired Zach Scott, it was to complement Jared. It wasn't to put Zach in that role. And I don't know Zach well, but I would assume that was Sandy's thought process. Because I think Sandy, in my mind, I know what I would want to be is constantly looking at the big picture from 30,000 feet rather than looking at the picture from a GM standpoint. I think it's completely two different views. And so I think that was a setback. And I would think that would be difficult to recover from in a short period of time, because philosophically for me, this was the year they really had to lay some groundwork in scouting and development of what their philosophy is going to be. Now, a lot of the people that were there prior to Sandy leaving the first time are still there, but you're still tweaking your philosophy, because I'm sure Brody did things differently than Sandy wants things done. And he probably needed a GM to really help him implement, that point of view. I think the Mets are a really good team. I have a theory on why teams have started so slow this year. I don't think they got enough at bats in the spring. I think clubs have become so hypersensitive on health long term. They limited the number of at bats. I had a breakfast the other day with Jimmy Tolman. He said his best years when he got 100 plate appearances in the spring. Now, he got a lot of those at the minor league camps, leading off innings and rotating fields, which we didn't have. But I do think guys got off to bad starts because I don't think guys were ready to start the season. I think you need at bats in spring training to hit the ground running, to find your rhythm, be able to see pitches, to get to a comfort zone. And I don't think 40 or 50 at bats are enough. And I think a lot of clubs start out behind the eight ball because of that.
And this was a lot of fun. Thank you for all the time.
Thanks, guys.
We've enjoyed it. It's great to catch up with you. We may grab you again down the road, but thank you again. And
I love it.
It's always good to see you. I love that you're
guys
down in Florida, by the way. I love the backdrop.
Yeah, it's
that's amazing.
It's our live backdrop too. That's not a
That's
thing.
amazing.
And I just have so much respect for both you guys. Type of men you are, and the things you've done with your careers, and I just feel like you guys have humble hearts, and we don't see enough of that in our game. And I really appreciate everything you guys have done for the industry too. So anyway, thanks guys for having me on.
I appreciate it. Yep. All right.
Thank you, Dan.
See you again.
Pleasure.
Bye-bye.